Welcome to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond, as well as help you up arrow your business and your personal life. Really excited about the guest that I have here today, Chase Mohseni. Chase is the CMO of heatmap.com, which works with Portland Leather Goods, Obvi, and many other great D2C darlings. He was the co-founder of Creative OS. Previously, he was the head of marketing at Pencil.ai, which was acquired, and a former filmmaker. Chase, happy to have you here.
Yeah, I sound pretty awesome when you intro me, William. I appreciate the time. Been listening along at all the amazing episodes, and hopefully we can kind of join the ranks of some of these great episodes you've had in the past.
Nice, I appreciate that. And maybe instead of saying welcome to the podcast, I should say Hale Shome Chetore, right?
Oh wow! Look at this guy. Look at this guy.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
coming in. He's ready for Persian New Year. He's ready for Persian New Year. That's amazing.
When is Persian New Year? I don't even know.
That's it's next week. It's next week on Tuesday.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
there we go. I got something new
Yeah.
to celebrate next week. There's a lot of fun to celebrate here right now.
Yeah.
I also, before I get into the meat of this, I got to give one more shout out. Sean Room over at Nativo. Sean has been like my number one fan. He's given me feedback on every episode. And so I just want to say, Sean, you have gotten my attention and I appreciate the heck out of you. And so keep up the great work with what you're doing. I had to give him a shout out here on the podcast. I do want to make sure I announce our sponsor too. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million and one that IPO'd recently. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. That said, enough of the boring stuff, on to the good stuff. Chase, something that you said on LinkedIn that I really appreciated is that you audited 20 high traffic websites on heatmap.com. 75% of them got the same thing wrong. And you've basically used what you've learned here to put together 7 core principles of CRO. And so what I wanted to talk to you about is, above the fold CRO, we can go below the fold as well, but just what are these 7 core principles of CRO?
So first core principle is, I guess a macro principle is your above the fold is really the only thing that matters, like in the end, because it's the only thing that will drive people to scroll anywhere past it or take any sort of action on your page. And so what I find, and I'll go through the 7, is you see a really well-designed page, but not a really well-designed above the fold. So you say like, okay, this is a really well-balanced kind of consistent page. They have really good, content. They've written everything really well, but they haven't packed enough. We call it internally like purchase velocity into that above the fold. And so like what we're trying to do is get people to take action, whether it's scroll or click some sort of CTA to take action to the next page, whether it's an add to cart or go to a collections page, whatever kind of place you land them. What's the next step in the journey that gets them closer to handing you their credit card and putting some dollars in your bank account, which then you can pump back into ads. So I'll talk about the 7 core principles of above the fold, because the kind of macro one is no one focuses on their above the fold. So here are the core principles. Design on mobile first, so you can see how your pop-ups, chat bubbles, and content interacts with each other. A lot of times you see, like, a cardinal sin for me is seeing content or pricing that is being covered up on my iPhone by a chat bubble or some sort of offer that comes up, or the content isn't spaced correctly because they've designed on a desktop and it doesn't it's not responsive, so that it's shrinking down to the right size. 80% of your traffic is coming from mobile.
Yep.
Why are you making sure that your desktop experience is incredible? Now, some people will counter argument. Their counter argument is, well, we are able to grab our customers and bring them in, and most of them convert on desktop anyway. Well, still, you need to give them an incredible mobile experience, because that's where most of the eyeballs are coming from. So that would be the first thing that I would call out.
So I want to call out on that real quick too,
Yeah.
because like you said, that's the first place that people experience your brand. That's the first thing that tells them whether or not your brand is trustworthy to get them the right product at the right time. If it's pretty but it's still not functional, you're communicating a lack of trust to these people as well, to your customers. That it's like, I don't know, if you can't handle serving me the products in the mobile frame that I'd like to see, how do I know that you're actually capable of getting me the product that I want in the right color, in the right size, sent to my correct address, right? Like you've already started to devalue that, similar to what I would see Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness, right? Where he shows up with no shirt on to a job interview. And it's like, doesn't mean that he's not capable of doing the job, but you do have to say like, well, what is this communicating about you? And so I completely agree with you. That's still the first interaction people are having with you. And so you've got to nail that trust right then and there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. One thing that people don't think about, we talk a lot about this in SaaS, is when you're onboarding people and dropping them to a dashboard, it's the only time you get 100% of eyeballs. So similarly, you're above the fold is the only time you have 100%. The minute there's some sort of scroll or page break, you're essentially now you're having a decay. So similar, we talk about ad fatigue and like those kind of customers decaying and the efficiency. Same thing when people start scrolling, you start losing people as you go. So like before I go to the next ones, I think a couple data points are really important here. Like 70% of your traffic will bounce in under 3 seconds. 80% of all brands in e-commerce come from paid ads. So like these are kind of two things: is if you have, people are bouncing and they're coming from paid traffic, so they want to get some answers quickly, you have to do a really good job at this above the fold. And 75% of your traffic doesn't get more than 30% of your way down the page. So like these are some staggering numbers when you start thinking about how much time you're spending on your above the fold. That leads me to kind of the next set of core principles. One is always have a CTA that helps your customers take the most valuable action on your website. So what does that mean? Is that word salad? Essentially what I'm saying is in your above the fold, you want to have something that gets people to the next part of the process. A lot of people, what you'll see is they'll have some sort of text, they'll have a big hero image, and then they'll have nothing that hyperlinks anywhere except if you go to the menu. So what we'll see is a huge amount of people on heatmap.com clicking on the menu bar because there's nowhere for them to click in that above the fold, and they just want to get to a collections page, or they want you to give them some sort of valuable action that they can take. So always have some sort of CTA. It doesn't have to be a shop all button, but it has to be something that essentially routes them somewhere that you think is going to be a high impact action that they can take. So that's number 2.
So, okay, have you seen where there's one that tends to do better than another? Like shop all almost feels like pointless. It's like, show me everything, right? And you go walk into a store, like let's just say a physical store, the first thing you do is like you see the Walmart greeter or whatever, you're like, hey, can you show me everything? Yeah. There's like a thing that you're like coming for. So is there something that you found in the tests, at least so far, to uncover that like there's shop all, but what's at least the one step in the right direction towards something better than shop all?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two schools of thought. I mean, there's more than two, but I'll just give my 2 schools of thought. There is hey, you want to send them to the most valuable set of products, or you want to send them to the newest set of products that essentially you can go and cross-sell, etc. So if you don't turn over SKUs that often, then you want to send them to a place that the highest value, highest conversion products are. So you could make a collection page. With that, you could send them to a product page directly, depending on what hero image you have in there. The second one is if you have a new, like you've done a new drop or something. Makeup and beauty brands, it's a lot. Fashion brands are able to do this a lot. CPG brands don't turn over product and SKUs as much as those first 2 examples that I gave you. So they're not able to do it as much. So they have to go kind of to the hero products a little bit more. So you'll see like a hero product be kind of part of the hero image that people can go to. And then as you scroll, you get into kind of some of the extra add-ons that go along with that, or stuff that might be either a cross-sell, upsell, or something for someone who's a returning customer that they can add to their basket. So TLDR, either some sort of collection that you have is high value, or like a product page that has some value, or the last one being a new collection that you might have.
Brilliant. I love it.
Okay, number 3. If you need an announcement bar, make sure it has a hyperlink to an offer. If there's no offer, there's literally no reason for it to exist. So announcement bars always take up 5% of your above the fold, maybe even 7, depending on how wide you do it. So most people, I see this a lot. People will either have a 2-line announcement bar, which doubles the size. They'll essentially say free shipping at this level of basket size. This is just a standard. You can have this on your product page. This does not change anyone's buying strategy. And if it does, it's not a customer you really want, to be completely honest with you, if they're obsessed with free shipping. But there's an Amazonification of the expectations. And so people think that that's still some sort of unique USP that they can give. But it's not. So if you have an announcement bar, have something purposeful, have something purposeful there, or like kindly your announcement bar can fuck off.
Sure. Yeah, to your point, it's not unique anymore. That's just kind of expected. And so the only reason you would say that is if like you don't have free shipping anymore. You're like, oh, hey, we don't, right? It's like now that's newsworthy to say that it's different. Not that you should do that, right? But it's just the idea that it's like that is what we're coming into the website expecting to be the status quo.
Exactly. Next one, no blocks of text longer than 2 lines. William, have you ever gone to a website and essentially been greeted by a wall of text? And you're like, nope, not doing that.
Yeah.
Here's the reason.
Yep.
Because you think, okay, if they're not able to explain something succinctly, remember, this is all just very intuitive for a person. If they can't explain this succinctly, how am I supposed to experience value in a succinct manner, right? Unless there's some sort of unique, like it's something that's helping your gut microbiome. And even then it should say like something that you then go into some detail on a product page for. But your hero image and your hero copy in your above the fold, your H1 should not have anything more than 2 lines. And you can go read everything you want from David Ogilvy. He will repeat what I'm saying. This is not a unique thing that I'm saying, but you want to have those 2 lines because it is essentially people can read that fast. Think of it like a tweet. You write a like 3-4 line tweet. Unless you're writing some sort of long form, the minute you go over those 2-3 lines, your engagement drops because people want to essentially just consume these things really quickly and then move on to the next thing. So never have lines of copy longer in your headlines longer than 2. Even in your sub headlines at the beginning, you don't want to overly explain everything. You want your story through the images, through your product, through what your ad has said to essentially get people to the next stage. And if they want to get really detailed, the product page should be able to do those things for you. So that's the next core principle.
Well, and that reminds me a lot of, there's 2 things that are going on here, right? There's the psychology aspect of somebody actually reading, like you said, a word salad, right? Some pleonasm that makes it absolutely impossible for them to decipher what's actually going on here. That's not good. But there's even just the visual aspect of the overwhelm that you see, especially when you go back to designing for mobile. And it reminds me of when broetry became such a thing on LinkedIn years ago, where we were, starting to do the, basically it was like line, double space, line, double space, line, double space. But the reason why that became a thing on LinkedIn and people hated it, a lot of people hated it, was because those of us who were maybe younger reading LinkedIn on our mobile phones, if it was any more than that, then it was just like, wow, when does this end? I'm not even going to read it. It's too long.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. 100%. I'll go to the next core principle there. This one's a shorter one, but font size should be larger than 14 px. And why is this something that I am pushing for? Think about reading something on your phone when you're moving really quickly and you don't have more than half a millisecond to really see if something makes sense. So think about this, 2 lines plus 14 px. So imagine you do 5 lines at 12. No one's going to want to read that, especially based on how you're putting your page together. What if the copy is white and the background is lighter, so it's hard to read those things? Automatic bounce, right? You have not thought about me and my customer experience. But if you have bigger, bolder text, say like 20, 22, people can then start reading it. They can understand it more quickly. They're going to be able to hit with that purchase conversion velocity that we're talking about. So that's a really big one that I see a lot of brands try to get cute with how they put their websites together, and they become I'm not telling anyone not to be obsessed with brand, but just take your brand text and double the size. That's all. Don't, have a good looking brand, all of those things. I'm not even going to get into trying to tell people not to do brand. But just make it bolder so that people can read it so they can make decisions because they know what you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems intuitive. It seems intuitive to some of us, but that's maybe because we see lots of websites. We see a lot of good ones. We see a lot of bad ones. And so we maybe take for granted what we feel already just immediately by going to a website. But I think that there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying there as far as just thinking about the user that's actually on the other side of this. Is this a good experience for them?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you'll find that kind of all of these, if you really go over them, are not novel approaches. It's more putting them together and saying, this is what I'm going to check off every single time I build something, whether it's a landing page, whether I'm looking at a website, or whether we're auditing our website. Do we hit these core principles? Will automatically make you perform better than 95% of brands in general, because someone undoubtedly in their builds will miss 1 to 2 of these things every single time. It won't be the same ones, but they will mix and match all of these regularly. So, if they make their font the right size, they'll have chat bubbles that pop up because they haven't designed mobile first. If they get designed mobile first, then they'll mess up something else. So essentially finding this as a checklist almost of just what you should be doing is a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
Okay, so next one. If your brand allows for this, right? I don't want to say that every brand can do this, but have some sort of social proof within that above the fold that just gets people thinking, dang, there are a lot of people who like this brand. Maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Because, the general consensus for everybody is they don't want to purchase anything, right? So how can we make them be operating with the alligator brain, not the judge brain? And social proof allows you to kind of keep in that emotional sphere. Like, okay, other people like it. I like it. I think it's going to be great for me. Let me go do it. Versus there's not many people talking about this brand. Like, is it real? This is just kind of, again, stock and trade parts of things that we do. But you would be surprised how people position these things across their websites and how they hide them, how they don't bring them into an area that is like a high value area visibility wise. So yes, that is that would be the number 6 out of our 7.
Yeah, totally agree with that as well. All right, bring us home. Number 7.
Okay, lucky number 7. If you want a pop-up, please do not have it be on a timer that's within 3 seconds of landing on your page. If your customer is going to bounce in 3 seconds and under 3 seconds anyway, why are you doing it at the 3-second timer? There should be some sort of action that has been taken. Either they hold longer, like they're in your above the fold for 7 to 10 seconds, or they've done a 30% scroll depth. And you're like, okay, they've taken an action that deserves this. What I see generally, and again, easy for me to say, I know it's effective, but you're really degrading the customer experience, right? People expect that. So if they're sticking around, they know that some pop-up is going to come up at some point that's going to allow them to get 10% off their first purchase. It is now just part of the game. Same way that people expect some sort of free shipping or some sort of shipping offer. These things should not be taken as novel. So if they're not novel, people expect them, people know to wait for them, then you can change the way that you have your customer flow. So it should be after 7 to 10 seconds or some sort of scroll that happens.
Yeah. It's kind of the idea where it's like, hey, do you want to buy this? Maybe it's 10% off. I don't know what it is yet though. Like, I don't know if I want to buy it even at 100%. I don't. Yeah. 99% off. I don't know if I even want to pay the 1% for it yet, because you haven't let me actually experience this and fall in love with the product or the brand or whatever it is yet.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Completely agree. So that is the 7.
So those are 7 really good. Yeah. And those are 7 absolutely great core principles for CRO above the fold. I want to dig into a couple of other things that you've said on LinkedIn that I think channel this same energy, but I'm just curious to hear you say them live as well. You had a hot take the other day that I saw. Too much data can stop you from making impactful decisions. I see many brands over-optimizing because of not knowing what metrics move the needle for their business. What does this mean, and what metrics should they be actually tracking that actually matter?
Yeah. Sometimes you just write stuff to get engagement. No. What this means is people, I've seen this across, it doesn't necessarily just mean, I'm not talking about e-commerce brands that we serve. I'm talking about just brands in general. So a lot of people will be focused on revenue in, right? Like at the bottom line, they'll focus on revenue in. So people are going to come back and they're going to say, oh, that's not what we're focused on. We're focused on EBITDA. We're focused on, net profit, blah, blah, blah. That is not most brands. Okay. Most brands are not as advanced as the people who are talking about their brands on Twitter. They don't know how to measure those things. They don't know how to keep log of those things. And so my general rule of thumb is you really want to understand like your margin stack in your business really well. And so what is my landed cost? And so people are gonna say, well, ends up being net profit. Well, how do you break it down and make it simpler? What is my landed cost? What is my pick and pack so that when they get the product, what is my standard CPA? And then what's left over? And with that, what's left over, how much goes to headcount and all the other ancillary costs that I have? How much profit do I have at the end of the day? And then what is my repeat rate? And so if you have a subscription business and you know that you're going to get someone on a 12-month window, you're going to get them to be there for 9 months. And like after Q3, they fall off. What can you do leading up to that fall off to get them to keep going? What is my payback period? So this is kind of my biggest, the thing I always talk about with everyone is like, at what point can we liquidate the CAC so that we feel like we're at, ROI kind of flat and we can go up from here. So I think a lot of people don't think about that. They just say, oh, have a good ROAS. And again, people are going to argue and say, this is not how it goes. I talk to probably more brands than most people. And I still don't think there is a huge sophistication to measurement as of yet.
Yep.
Or they don't understand what actually leads to business impact. And so there are a lot of smart people who can share more about this than me. But I think that the other one I'll just use SaaS as an example, is there are a lot of metrics you can juice, right? So if you want people to engage more, you can just send them a bunch of emails, right? That's not real engagement, right? And so a lot for me comes down to what's the depth and richness of engagement or activation or, the revenue that you're receiving. If it's a dead client, well, like you're kind of DOA on that. Eventually someone's going to get wise and that's going to churn, right? And so what we want is to have real active engaged customers in the product, whether you're e-commerce, subscription business or you're in software. And so I'm always thinking about how do we get people to be active, engaged, and my kind of North Star metric for all business is what is my word of mouth coefficient. So like, what does that mean? It means for every one customer I get, how many customers can I expect them to get me? And so if you can get 1-to-1 plus, incredible. Usually it's some fraction of a person. So you get 3 customers, you get 1 customer. So you can cut your CAC by 30% at that point. So like, or you cut it, 25% because for every 4 customers, 1 is free. And so you paid $100 for 4 customers. So now your CAC is $25. So that is probably, if you said, what's your North Star metric, is how do I build businesses that have amazing flywheels that drive a strong word of mouth coefficient, whether it's through content, whether it's through product, whether it's through some sort of incentive, whatever structure your business needs. There is no one size fits all. Anyone who says that is a moron. But word of mouth coefficient is kind of like my North Star God metric, because if you have a strong word of mouth coefficient, whether you're sales led, product led, whatever you are, your business is going to always have some sort of pulse, no matter what kind of hurdles you're going through. I can vouch for this, having been through some of those hurdles where we kept our word of mouth coefficient strong, and it kept us through and it flattened out some of those valleys in a really, really meaningful way. Where if we hadn't had that, or we hadn't built the system to do that, we would be in a whole world of hurt. So lean into that as much as possible. Figure out how to make I don't want to say like a viral product, because those things kind of rise and fall. As what did he say in Troy? Rise and fall like the winter wheat.
Right.
This is more about how do you build the sustainable ability to get your customers to talk about you, recommend you, and be acquisition engines for you.
Right. Beautifully said. That's a whole bunch of the best metrics. Like like you said, throwing out ROAS. I wrote a long article about what I called the ROAS death spiral, because I think overemphasis of ROAS just causes you to kill your business. And the sophistication of getting into these metrics, like you said, they're difficult sometimes to get into, but even like, months to pay back or months to break even.
Yeah.
It's a wild different shift for a lot of businesses in how they think about their business. Aside from metrics, something else you said that I really appreciated, which was letting people bake the cake, hierarchy of needs. What does this mean? What do you mean by letting people bake the cake?
So, I am an AI OG. What does that mean? I was in AI before it was cool. We were in all the channels when OpenAI, no one knew what the hell it was. And in Slack, working with them on GPT-1 and 2. And so, what does that mean? I remember when GPT-3 came out and it was incredible. We tried to automate everything when we were at Pencil. And what we found was people didn't like it. And what I've looked at is when I go and either advise companies, I go and study companies, there's a certain amount of desire to actualize and realize value created yourself. And so you want to get to a certain threshold. And so I always call it like, it's the 80-20 rule we always talk about. If you can get people 80% of the way there and you give them 80% of fidelity with what they were somehow expecting, they'll take it the last 20% and they'll love you for saving them that 80 minutes out of 100 that they were going to spend on something, but they still want to be involved. And anyone who says they don't, go use ChatGPT. You're not plugging and playing that. You're looking at it and you're like, okay, this is good enough. I'm now going to, I'm going to play around it. I'm going to do a little bit of a dance that has, like has the William magic or the Chase magic or whoever. And so what does that mean? Whatever your product is, you want your customer. So why does e-commerce have such an incredible power? Well, I'm wearing this red shirt. It's from a company called Vince. I'm wearing sweats right now with it. These like sweats that I bought that are really comfortable. There's probably been 10,000 of these shirts sold, maybe even more. Every person wears them differently. That's baking the cake, right? Every person takes their athletic greens in some sort of different way. So Huberman's like, hey, squeeze some lemon in it, right? I put MCT oil in mine. We're baking the cake a different way, but it's done. It's handed there. It is gut health in a bag, right? Similarly, when you have software products, for instance, which is what I've been peddling for years now, you need to let people feel that they have some sort of agency. And so that's really what we're talking about here is people, no matter what, no matter how far technology has come, people want agency. And a great parable for this is that movie WALL-E, where everyone is on that ship and they're all laying there and they have jelly legs because they have no agency. And the minute their eyes open that there's agency, they all get excited because they don't realize that they've been asleep at the wheel. And so similarly, I think every single person wants agency. It's what a lot of the depression in this country feels like. I'm not trying to get political on this whole thing, but a lot of people don't feel like they have the ability to change their lives and fix it the way they want just because they see certain things on the internet and say, I can never get to this level, because they don't understand that you can bake the cake the way you want. You have all the tools that you need. It's a simple, how do I get there? And so why do people go to universities? I have a master's degree. You go because they essentially have put guardrails on so that you can go bake the cake you want to make, but you know that at the end of that, you'll have some semblance of agency to take control of your life. And so breaking that down to the micro, it really comes down to products. It is, how do you take the customer or user to the farthest point, the local maxima that you can, and then let them go the rest of the way so that they're crossing the finish line themselves so they get the glory. Because it's all their story at the end. Bringing it back to filmmaking there for you. It's all their story.
Well, you want them to be the hero of the story. And I think sometimes if you're the hero, it's not as exciting to them as letting them be the hero of their own story. And you're just going to you want to be their Robin, not their Batman, right? So it's like, how do you be the Robin? It's like showing up, you're helping them. I love that you called out WALL-E. That's a movie I haven't heard in a long time, and I've heard it twice in the same day. So that's just really funny. So earlier today, scrolling through TikTok this morning, and I saw somebody was on, I don't even know, like a Segway basically, with their Apple Vision Pro, and they were at like a movie theater. They ordered popcorn, and then it's like no hands. They have their popcorn and their drink, and they just zoomed off, and they were like, "This guy's living Wally right now.
Yeah.
He's just in his own little world."
100%. That's terrifying, actually.
But it is a little terrifying. Although I do like the Vision Pro. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's pretty sweet. I used a buddy of mine.
Have you tried it?
I used a buddy of mine. It's a little heavy still, but that just takes time. I think like if you think about the original iPhone, how much of a brick it was and how like useless it feels now, and it was so novel at the time. I think, within 2 to 3 generations of this, they'll get the front hardware so that it's not so heavy and it doesn't hurt around the ears. Yep. But I went and I had a pretty interesting like look around the top of the Himalayas, and I felt like I was there legitimately. He's like, "Hey, let's go. You want to go to Everest?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." And I kind of did. I did a 270. I was like, "This legitimately, like, I had one of those. Okay, I'm gonna put my hand out because it feels like I am there." And the pixel perfection was
brilliant.
Was wild. It was absolutely wild. I did some of the other like played around with the Allo app just to look at kind of like how you shop, and then like I think it's going to be pretty incredible as they put in avatars or like different things where you can kind of see yourself. I'm sure there'll be some sort of like spatial computing where they'll look at your body in that moment and kind of be able to superimpose it into there so you can see it. So I dig it. I'm excited I want to kind of watch Napoleon or something from Apple on it to just see how that works. Kind of seeing something in CinemaScope like the old days. We only have one in LA. We have one Cinerama theater where it's essentially like it's like a curved screen past your eyes, and it is a wild experience to see movies on that. So I think this will have something similar that you can have a real like proper dome experience with movies. So I think it's great.
Yeah. I've been very impressed with it. The Allo Yoga app, I reviewed that same app, and so like there's a lot of things that I'm excited about for it. And I have a Meta Quest 2. I never got the 3, but I haven't picked it up literally since I got the Apple Vision Pro. I haven't even picked it up. There's just so much more depth and richness that's on the Vision Pro. But this is a tangent. There is another thing that I want to get back to for those who are listening for CRO stuff. You talked about a scarcity sandwich, which I really like this technique. And then you talked about it in relationship to Viome, which I think is a nice tie-in because you're talking about gut health a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But when you talk about scarcity sandwich and how that improves CRO, what is a scarcity sandwich and how have you seen it applied in a way that really helps to improve conversion?
So, very great question. First reason I talk about gut health, I have Crohn's disease, so it's on top of my mind at all times. A scarcity sandwich is essentially you hit them with 2 offers between this. Like, hey, you have this offer, whatever it is at the top of your screen in your announcement bar. And this is when you actually do one that drives value or has some sort of linkage to an offer. And then you have some sort of like offer that's leaving, or you have some sort of time-based outcome. So say like you can have this this outcome in 7 days. And then you put the product in between that. And the idea is you're going to miss out on this product that I have. You're going to miss out on this product experience that you're going to have. And you're going to miss out on this opportunity to feel a certain way. And so you're building a sandwich of scarcity, which then your product is essentially the meat or the pièce de résistance in the middle. And so you're essentially trying to drive people to order. So why it has to be a sandwich, or why a sandwich works so well is, an open-faced, how do we say it's like an open-faced bagel with lox is great, but when you drop that other piece on top, it is a complete kind of sandwich and meal. Here, let's just say you only have the top one. Essentially, people can drop off and forget, and they're not going to take action. They're going to keep scrolling, and like then you have to win them back with some sort of intensity or like again purchase intent velocity. When you sandwich them, well, they have to make a decision. Do I want to lose out on said offer and said opportunity now? Do I keep scrolling? Do I go to the product page? Do I go to checkout page and like read some FAQs? Like I now have to make a really strong decision, but I'm feeling really good about this because I really like the product. I dig the story from the ad that came or the story that's there. And I know that these great things are going to happen. So I want to take more action. So it's just another opportunity to essentially drive people to take action. It's a bit of gaming the system. I wouldn't do it all the time, but if you want to throw it in twice a quarter, right, and get essentially say like, all right, I got to pop my numbers. This is like a hack you can do 1 week at a time, twice a quarter. So like just say 3 out of my 13 weeks, I'm going to have a scarcity sandwich that I know will pop revenue, but it's not always a great user experience, to be real.
Yeah. And that's fair, right? Like there's such a balance. I think about it as, two sides of the same string. I've heard that phrase before, and I really like it because it's like if you pull on one side, then you pull the other. And if you pull that side, then you're pulling it that way. And so there is that element of something that's going to increase conversions might not necessarily feel like it's the best user experience either. And something that's just purely based on user experience might not increase conversions. And so there is that necessary level of friction that finds that happy sweet spot between the two of them.
Yes, perfection. Absolutely. Completely agree with you.
The other thing you said that I appreciated is nostalgia is powerful. And I love nostalgia. We all do. Like when you think about nostalgia from a CRO standpoint, why do you think nostalgia has the effect that it does? And what are ways that brands can use nostalgia more to their benefit?
So every generation has good old days for them. I'm curious to see what Gen Z calls the good old days. But like,
sure.
Why does use Blink-182 as an example? Blink-182 does a reunion tour, sells out like crazy. Everyone's losing their mind, pay out the ass to see that show, right? Because it reminds you of the good old days. Why do they run out Harrison Ford? And again, I love Indiana Jones, but why do they run him out a fifth time, 15 years after the last one came out that no one liked or wanted? Again, nostalgia hits in and they make hundreds of millions of dollars because people are like, it's Indy. I got to go see Indy, right? At a micro level, you can do this with brands that people grew up with. So when you have essentially a segmentation of who are my buyers today. So let's just say they are 28 to 40. Well, what did they experience in their childhood that they're interested in? So like, let's just use an example of, I don't know. Since we talk about them often, like let's use Obvi's collagen. Well, they have a bunch of these Entenmann's ones but they could do a collagen for millennials that is based on fruit roll-ups or Gushers or Dunkaroos or something. And automatically you remember being a kid and the joy you felt in opening that wrapper. And through osmosis now you're like, well,
100%.
If Obvi has it, like I want to have that because I want to bring back that feeling that I had, plus have all the benefits that I know this product has for me in my life. So now I get to have fun and be healthy. Sold. And so a lot of brands have done a good job of this. I would say don't just do it to do it. Like there should be some sort of actual like product symbiosis between what you're trying to leverage with like that nostalgia and then your product and what you're selling. But there are some kinds of categories that can do a really good job of this. So your fashion can do really fun collabs.
Totally.
Like I have there's this company called 11 Paris. And they do a lot of fun, interesting t-shirt collabs. So I have one that's I have a bunch of Star Wars ones, and it is a picture of a lightsaber just coming up on like straight up the chest. And my son now is like, why are you wearing a Star Wars shirt? Because he knows what a lightsaber is for, right? So
sure.
Bing. But every time I put that on, I'm like, man, this is cool. Because I know the material is really nice and I like the brand in and of itself. But I'm wearing my Jedi shirt and it says Jedi on the back and it says 77 for when Star Wars was created. Those kind of things have a huge impact, but you need to know where the symbiosis and synergy lies. Don't just do it to do it, because there are so many examples of people doing a terrible job of this. And so It's almost more worth your time if you're willing to have more willing to dig into what actually works for your brand rather than, just doing it to do it.
We had another guest on the show before, Andy Heddle, and he did a lot of brand collaborations. And one of the examples that he gave of one being done very poorly was Arby's and Warby Parker. And when you hear that, even in and of itself, you're just like, wait, what? Like, there's some explanation that needs to be done. And that one bombed and failed, I think, for the most part too. It really didn't have the effect that either one of them wanted on it. And so to your point, yes, you need to do this well. But I would say that brand collaborations are things that a lot of companies are sleeping on. And the call out that I want to bring up that Andy brought up there as well is just because you're a smaller brand doesn't mean you don't have something amazing to offer to a larger brand, because very likely you have a very good, tight niche follower group, like that they're trying to reach. And being able to have that brand collaboration could be exactly what they're looking for. So don't write yourself off from being able to work with a big giant brand from a collaboration standpoint. You have what they don't have, and they have what you don't
100%.
have. That's what makes it beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I completely agree.
So we've talked about a few brands that have done CRO well. What's an example of a brand that you think is just destroyed their above the fold, or like some type of CRO thing that you're like, don't do this? Like, I've seen this and it's going to kill it. Please don't be like this company.
Oh God. I hate flaming people. I'm like the anti-flamer online. But I looked at this brand. We just shipped a newsletter. There's a company called Rain. So they're like a more fashion-y brand. But I actually really liked something. And then right after, they essentially did a version of what they had done. I'm gonna explain it a little bit. And it completely ruined like how they had set the table. So you go to a collections page on Rains, and they have this really beautiful navigation at the top before you get to products, new arrivals, bestsellers, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, I was like, wow, this is really slick. It works really well with the brand aesthetic, which is super important. But then on the website, you can go to us.rains.com and go to a collections page, and you'll see this exact thing. They have a filter button that's just sitting in the middle of the bottom third of both products in the middle, and it's covering some of the product names, and it's covering one of the prices. Like, well, but you have a filter at the top. Like, why can't you just hide this filter in the top? If they want to really get detailed with their filtering, just have them like the expectation is that it's going to sit in that area, but you're trying to get too cute with how you have this filtering. And then there is a chat bubble right next to it. So essentially there is this like 3/4 kind of CTA that's not a real CTA, just sitting in the middle of the page, right where you're seeing pricing. So I was very frustrated when I saw that. And I wrote that in my do not like section of the newsletter. Because they had some stuff that was really nice.
Sure.
But that is just top of mind, like faux pas, absolute faux pas.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good to stay away from certain things. Like you said, again, it all comes back to putting yourself in the shoes of the human being that's on the other side of this and saying,
that's all
is this good?
That's
and I think sometimes we just need to step back and actually go sit in those shoes. Something else that I wanted to talk about, this isn't e-commerce necessarily, but I'm a big fan of lateral thinking. And that ability to think about things that are outside of necessarily your core, and seeing how you can bring that into something that you can use. Mm-hmm. You have a good SaaS background, and so there's a few things I wanted to pull from your SaaS mind here as well. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why I'm a big fan of this is you mentioned this up above as well. Some of the metrics that you called out, those are more typically SaaS metrics that are kind of making some adoption in e-commerce, but haven't made as full adoption. I remember when I started doing a lot of e-commerce, we talked a lot about LTV to CAC ratios. That was a very, very SaaS thing, and e-commerce has come around to it. But I would still say, if you're talking about e-commerce has come around to it, I'm saying maybe some of the top e-commerce brands look at that. A whole bunch of e-commerce brands still don't have that even remotely in their vernacular. Mm-hmm. But what else would you say if you're building a SaaS business from the ground up, and you've done this now, what has enabled you to be successful in that you think might translate into e-commerce? Maybe it doesn't, but we can just talk about it and see how it does.
Such a loaded and beautiful question. So I'll step back and say what I think SaaS has learned from e-com and what I think e-com has learned from SaaS. So I think e-com has learned measurement from SaaS and how to think about their business in a much more meaningful way so that they can understand what actual like leading indicators, because key performance indicators, forget that. Like, what are the upstream things I can be looking at that allow me to have downstream success? SaaS is incredible at this, and I think e-com is starting to get really, really strong at this. What has SaaS learned? Well, SaaS has learned about brand building. And so before it was like, look, you have product, you have this, you have some money, you're just going to go advertise on channels and you're going to go to conferences and, you'll have salespeople and you'll sell.
Sure.
Now you actually have to own a brand. There are companies, use Air, for example, the browser company that launched Arc, that have merch stores, right? Like getting a Fast hoodie was a big deal. And so I always say, and I'll get into kind of the second part of this question, what they can do. But, I always tell people in SaaS, like, you have two products. You have your brand and you have your actual product that people use. Both things need to run parallel to each other. But the brand is always going to help smooth out the rough edges of the product, where if you just went product alone, you'd be graded on product alone. And I've seen this happen time and time again, where people just focus only on building their product, and like, more power to you. But you will always be only as good as the last metric report that came out, or the last time that they used your product. And if, God forbid, you had some sort of bug that day that was, platform level, not just for one user, and they said, well, you know what, I'm coming up for renewal. Fuck these guys. You don't have anything that essentially smooths out those curves, right? And so, like, why do you have, for instance, use customer success people or sales people or customer support people? It is when someone has a bad experience or needs something, you allow them to smooth out that experience. That's kind of expensive and isn't going to be scalable if you have certain cost basis that you need to hit. So what allows you to do that? Brand does, right? It is another customer support person. And I've actually never articulated it that way. I'm having kind of a riff right now,
I like that.
thinking about it. And I kind of like that idea as well. It's like your brand is another customer support person, because there's a certain inherent trust that comes around from a brand that has planted their flag in the ground and said, we do these things for you. We're going to provide value when we don't have to. We're not going to charge for those things. I'll give you one example. We do this. We've been starting this How We Buy series for CRO, and we get a bunch of good brands to come in, agency owners, etc. We just break down pages, and we don't sell anything on it. We don't, like, there's no hard pitches. It's just, hey, we're going to break down some big time pages, and then anyone who's on this can submit, and we will do a quick audit of CRO, and everyone's going to give an opinion. And everyone loses their shit when they're in there, because it is just free value that you would pay $10,000 to get from all the minds that are in there, right? Like, we have a really cool guest coming up on the next one, and everyone's going to go bananas for it. And I get weeks after people emailing me, can I get the recording? I didn't get to make it. Oh, I heard about the event. Can I get the recording link? No, I'm not messaging people about it. I don't post that many clips about it. But the idea is we've built this brand equity from this to say, wow, this amazing content that you're putting out is so useful. So this is the key, right? Useful. Right. That I really want to be a part of it. And so, like, I love some of the companies that are doing this, where they'll, for instance, we use like Aloe Yoga. They'll have live yoga classes on their Instagram, right? What value it provides. I can go take what would cost me $50 to go and do a yoga session with a professional, like a high-end professional, and feel like I'm part of the community, right? And it's free. What brand, like, incredible brand value that they're creating by doing something like that. And so people say, like, well, this is expensive. We're a small SaaS company, and we're bringing in people, and we're using relationships. And so the amount you invest in your community and some of these other places that you can use, you can go and amortize the cost of that by creating these events that then bring you deal flow downstream.
Yeah.
Right? I have a friend, I helped him get a newsletter started for his agency. That thing now prints him money every single time, because he has an angle that he's working on. He hits it all the time. He created a podcast that flows into that, so he's able to put more into it specifically. So what I'm saying is those two things work together, and that's essentially what I've seen SaaS take from e-com is brand building. What I've seen is learning your metrics. And I because I always find it funny when someone in e-com says they're a growth marketer. I'm like, dude, you're not a growth marketer. Like, you're a performance marketer. It's cool. You're learning growth marketing, but like, don't tell a SaaS person you're a growth marketer. They'll literally run circles around you with the way that they think about data and are able to synthesize data. That's not not me shitting on anybody, but like, it's just,
no, I agree.
I would never tell
a
SaaS person to say that they're amazing at brand when you go talk to someone who's building branded Lululemon. Like, absolutely, go take a hike. So those are kind of the things I think about um, between the two disciplines or the two categories, I guess.
Who's the guest? You can't say you've got a really cool guest and not say who it is.
Sorry? He's a person you know who has a newsletter that you know, um, who his name might be Schmick Schmarma.
Rhymes
uh,
with.
yeah, a little slip. If anyone
Yeah.
gets to this episode before the event, they'll know who the secret guest is. So this is a little Easter egg for everybody.
That's perfect. That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to get into also your backstory. I
Sure.
love talking about all of the work stuff, but I also like talking about like who is Chase Mohseni.
Yeah.
You have an interesting backstory, and there's a lot we could get into, and I'm going to leave it up to you as far as I'm going to leave it that broad. There's a lot we get into, but what basically you want to share about where you've started to getting you to where you are now as CMO of a really awesome company.
Yeah, 100%. How did I start? So, I started as a filmmaker, and how I started out as a filmmaker is I dropped out of school because I was doing too much drugs and I needed to take care of that. Back in college, I went home and I just fell in love. Like I'd always loved movies, but essentially it was like a form of therapy where I was like, all right, I get to go hang out in these worlds. I don't have to think about my own shit that I don't like thinking about on a day-to-day basis. And then, as one does, you get interested in like, how did these things made? Like, how do you make these things? And so I looked into screenwriting. I started, looking at reading screenwriting books and started thinking like, oh, I could do this, which is just folly. But I started writing screenplays. And some of them, not the first few, but some of them started getting decent. And I was like, oh, I should go to school for this. And my parents were just excited that I wanted to go to school because they had thought like, man, this kid completely fucked it up. And so they were excited that I was excited. And so I went to school for screenwriting. I went to then I went to get my master's for filmmaking because writing, filmmaking. I wanted to be a writer director. Then I made a movie for my graduate thesis film, and so they said, "Hey, make a short film." I'm like, "Oh, fuck off! I'll make a feature film. I'll raise a bunch of money for it, and we'll go get some actual like proper actors." So we did that. It had
and you did. You got some real actors in that.
Yeah, we got some proper actors in it, and we it got bought by a distributor. It got released in New York and LA. Had a little run. Did a couple festivals, the whole thing people talk about, not at the level that, you saw Vinny Chase do back in the day in Entourage with Sundance and Cannes and all of that, but, respectable. Second time you try to over optimize and you try to make a new movie. And like I'm sure any entrepreneur would say, the second time around, all the things you did wrong. And so you're trying to make everything perfect rather than using that same kind of chutzpah that you had the first time around and like that naivete that actually drove momentum. And I had a bunch of opportunities come my way that I said no to because I was an auteur and, I was smarter than everybody. And very quickly you learn like, people stop offering and they feel like you're an asshole when you act like that. So I had a movie fall apart a few times. And the final time I was like, dude, fuck this. Now that whole time, indie filmmaking doesn't pay. And I didn't want to do anything that would degrade the fact that I was an auteur. All the things that actually pay you money, like directing commercials and writing scripts for people and being, a writer on a TV show. So I worked at a fashion company, making content for them. And then they asked me like, hey, so what do we do with this content? I'm like, that is above my pay grade, brother. I'm like, well, we need to run ads. Do you know how to run ads? And they were like, we'll pay you. More money. That sounds very interesting. YouTube, you and I are going to have a fun weekend. And I essentially did like a crash course in media buying, ran some ads for them. They were more successful than what they had been having, which was kind of impossible for it not to be because the person didn't even watch videos that ran them the last time. They just clicked a few buttons. And this was before, I know you go back to the day when this shit was not failure proof, right? Like you had to be a
Right.
proper scientist back in the day. Like, no, how do I do
Exactly.
this? Like, what do I need
Day
to click here?
parting,
You were
hour
like,
parting.
to get an ad launch, you would spend an hour clicking buttons, and then you're like, okay, I have this husk. I will now only be duplicating this, and then making
Yep.
sure nothing got unclicked. So did that. That was successful. Felt like it was time to move on. Move to an agency. Found I didn't love client work for huge clients. So we were dealing with like multinationals, like these are all Fortune 50 companies.
Wow.
It just moved really slow. And this is like a recurrent theme. I'm a pretty impatient son of a bitch about stuff. So I want to move really fast. Went to a tech company. Did marketplace and did all the ads for them, and then moved to Pencil after that. Like the whole Pencil story is, very serendipitous. Was at Pencil, was there for 3+ years. We got acquired, and here we are at Heatmap. Met Dylan, really dug what he was doing. Felt like CRO was the kind of next frontier for e-commerce businesses and all businesses online to actually really pump up their efficiency. Not that ads aren't the place to do that, but I saw that space was saturated, and kind of the thinking around that had not really evolved so much. And there was still so much blue ocean within CRO and websites that was willing to be ready to be untapped. And then having a CEO that you work with that is a domain expert, it's like a bit of a cheat code, both for me and my learning, and then also for our ability to build things that people actually want. So that's how we got here. And in the meantime, I had started company with some friends called Creative OS, which has gone pretty well.
So, like I said, there's what I love about this is your background isn't exactly the path that I think most people would say, like, oh, that's the obvious path towards becoming the CMO of a data company, heatmap.com or whatever, right? My background isn't a very linear either. And most of the people that I talk to have significantly interesting, varied backgrounds that led them to where they are. And so I love that. One of the things that you brought up to me in our pre-call is just this idea of like, what makes you magical? Like, what's your magic? And so you hinted at these, but it's like, what's that one or two things that is your magic?
What am I? So I, for a while, really resented the fact that I spent so much damn money on filmmaking. And what I've learned is actually the study of people and the study of stories, plus my being forced to learn data, because that was one of the writings on the wall I saw pretty early on in my career. Was like, okay, all the people that people listen to in calls know how to read a spreadsheet and know how to control that conversation through data. I got to go learn that, and that is not something that comes naturally to me. So what has become a magical ability is I know the customer story and I know the data story. And because of my ability to communicate, I can tell that story in a really meaningful way that people will rally behind. And so that has become something magical. And so it's like, I always call it storytelling through data. The second one is I'm you know me at this point, I'm a pretty gregarious person. And so I would say a good connector with and of people. And that has been hugely impactful for me. Both in just the personal, I love doing it. I love being with people. I love learning new stories, learning from people, being able to help them as much as I possibly can. Because I said this to you, I think in our pre-call, I'm a big believer in send the elevator back down when you can, even if it's someone who is better than you at something, but maybe you have a leg up in something else. If you can just help them get to where they need to go, like you've done your part. And I've been the beneficiary of like 2 to 3 different times this has happened, and had huge kind of fork in the road, like positive outcomes for me. And so through mentors, through finding new people, new companies, etc. And so I really believe in that. I think the other one is because I always have felt like I'm not the smartest person in the room, which is good. I always want to be the least intelligent person in every room that I'm in, because that means I'm in a place where I'm trying to strive and have to push myself.
Sure.
I'm obsessed. My wife would complain about how much I spend time reading, trying to find new things, new angles, new ways of thinking. Forget like just forget business. Like, how do I expand my mind so that I'm not locked in the same infrastructure and the same web that I've created for myself? Like, what's gonna pop me out? I'm reading a book right now by this guy who started Maxim, and he's talking about business, and like some of the stuff he says just punches you right in the nose, and you're like,
Sure.
okay, like I would not have phrased that that way, but like that is exactly what I needed to hear today. So I think those are kind of the three things that I would give you. I didn't give you a TLDR, but I don't do TLDR.
I'm not much of a
I always do,
TLDR either.
yeah. I always say TLDR at the end. They're like, well, TLDR is for the beginning of the explanation, not the end. I was like, well, I don't. This is the ABCs of me, baby.
Yeah, I'm not much of a TLDR person either. In fact, I can remember, I believe it was my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Hall. We were trying to do, it was something like, she would say, put it in a nutshell, right? Like that was the thing. It's like summaries. Okay, put it in a nutshell. And she was like, that's not even remotely close to a nutshell. She was like, you have zero ability to put anything into a nutshell, don't you? And that's when I learned, and I used to read the dictionary. And so I learned the word pleonasm, and it became one of my favorite words around that time, which is basically using more words than necessary to describe something. And so it's like, yep, pleonasm, we're friends. I love that. Not much of the TLDR person. I also like talking about, so I don't know if you and I even talked about this, but up arrow is a mathematical notation. So there's Knuth's up arrow. When you want numbers that are way bigger than exponents, you use up arrow notation. And so it's just the idea. It's like, well, how are we up arrowing business, but also how are we up arrowing our personal lives? Something you told me about that you use to up arrow your personal life, besides just reading, is being passionate about momentum. What do you mean by being passionate about momentum?
So I can feel myself drag, and I can feel what it does to my brain, and I can feel fog kind of coming in if I don't move fast. And so there's a saying by John Wooden, which is be quick but don't hurry. And so I was joking with you before we started the call that I slept through a bunch of alarms today. I woke up at 8 o'clock. So like I am absolutely living the opposite of my entire, like this entire thing that I'm saying. Some days you need actually like a little reset. But what I try to do is say like, okay, what can I do today to move with a pace that feels a little scary for me? And different parts of your day do different things for you. And so like, for instance, you get up in the morning. I was telling you, usually get up at 5. Well, I want to get up, I want to read, I want to write, I want to work out, I want to set up the house so that, by 7, when everyone is awake, there's nothing left to be done. And I have kind of like gotten my mind right. At night, everyone goes to sleep. My wife usually passes out like 9. So I have like 9 to 11 and I can go pace again, right? Like, okay, I'm going to get everything cleaned and I'm going to just kill it. That last bit. Is there some little left on a project? Is there something that like set up the day for the next day? Like what is that thing that I can do to move fast? Okay, during the day, what are the time blocks that I can do? And there are different things. You have kids, it's like sometimes you have this 3-hour block that you're just not going to get anything done. Well, what can I do in that to build relationship momentum with them? Right? So I started maybe 3 months ago, I started buying all these little experiment things that I could do with my son 2 to 3 nights a week. Right? Now he's asking me about them, right? So we now have a relationship momentum that's exciting. So like tomorrow, I'm going to take him on a hike. I haven't done that. My mom used to do that with us all the time. And I just kind of been indoors, mentally, I don't know why. But the idea is, what can you do? I took my wife out to lunch last week, right? I said, we haven't been, at night we fall asleep. And then on the weekends, we're doing stuff with the kids. We haven't spent enough time together. And it shouldn't just be, hey, we're going out for Valentine's Day or our anniversary or my birthday. Let's just go do something silly, right? Let's go. I don't know. You want to go shopping? I'll walk around with you and I'll hold your clothes at the dressing room. I don't give a fuck. So like momentum doesn't have to be just, hey, work. How do I move really quickly? It is in my life. How do I make sure that I build enough inertia that like we're just moving across everything? And I can feel when I'm not doing a good job of it. And so that's why I try to keep myself moving. And I always ask myself, this is kind of like the word I say over and over to myself is pace. I just keep saying pace, pace. What's your pace? What's your pace? What's your pace? And I find myself when I'm not pushing myself on that, I just let things slip. Mainly myself, to be honest with you. Like you kind of have to do the other things. But I think like if you're trying to up arrow yourself across the entire gamut, you're almost never gonna let business slip. Like almost never. But it's always in your face. You're always going to be trying to be intense about work and delivering for your team, for yourself,
100%.
the business, yada, yada.
Yep.
What you let slip is also your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your wife, your relationship with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Forget friends and siblings and parents outside of that. And I think at the end, like business is awesome, but you don't take it with you. And like, I was thinking my grandfather was a very well-respected attorney in Iran. And when he was passing away, I was sitting by his bedside. I was like, hey man, like, you have all these books that you've written and this kind of stuff that's in Iran. And like, it's, your legacy is secure. And he's like, I don't give a shit about any of that. Like, you guys are all here. That's
Sure.
the legacy. Right? Like, everyone is here. I'm dying and everyone is hanging out. Like, my brother, no one showed up at his thing except me. Right? He had 4 other siblings, by the way, outside of my grandfather. And so I think there's you have to just recalibrate a lot. And like, I want to win big. I want to do all the things that everyone talks about, writes about, everything that we revere in business, 100% tattooed on my heart. But there's a deeper tattoo down there, which is my family is actually my business. And my life is my business. And I got to take care of that. The problem is because it's so deep and embedded, you take care of the one that's outside a little bit more. And so that's the thing that I think if I said, what do I struggle with? Is I want to keep momentum, I want to keep pace, but I want to keep it across kind of both matrix, the entire matrix of my life, and figure out how to do that. But I don't believe, like anyone who talks about, I don't want to pause after this, but anyone who talks about balance and all of this, like I don't think that exists. I think your life is an ocean and the waves fall and like they rise and crest. They crest and then they fall. It's like an undulating ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Some days you have a little bit more time. Take advantage of it. Don't be an asshole and like try to get more shit done. If you have a moment, go spend it somewhere that's valuable outside of that, because there'll be a day where you got to work till 1 a.m. What are you going to do then?
Yep.
Right? Oh man, I wish I had made the time to do that. And so that's something I have to force myself to do, or like put in my calendar. We're going to do this, etc. So like that's how I think about momentum in general. For practical, people are trying to do that. Like if you're trying to get learning momentum so you can up level your business, just set time on your calendar every day that you're going to spend time reading. Get an app. What's this app I have on my phone? There's an app called Matter where you can put newsletters in and it will turn it into like a podcast for you. And the voices are actually pretty good. So if you want to read something, but you don't have time, but you're walking, or you can do something like that and you can listen to audio, do that. You can find ways to do it, but you have to essentially try to fit these things into your life rather than trying to fit your life into these things, if that makes sense as a framework.
Does. Makes complete sense. Those oxygen masks that they'll have deployed in an airplane, going down or whatever, and they always tell you, put it on yours first, then put it on your child or something like that. And there's something in us, and for some reason that feels selfish. But when you actually think about what's necessary, if you don't put yours on, you're likely going to just pass out. And so now you can't put theirs on and they can't reach it. And so like what was more selfish was you not doing what needed to happen in the order that it needed to happen, because now they don't have you. Right. And I think about that oftentimes with what you were just saying too, of riding those different waves, getting that time to recharge when that time is afforded to you. So that way you can hit it hard when you need to hit it hard. And the idea of fitting things in, it reminds me a lot about the EOS framework. And I don't know if you're familiar with EOS traction, but there's this analogy of rocks and pebbles and sand and water. And if you take this vase and you try to put the sand in first and then the pebbles and then the rocks, it won't fit. It'll be too much. You can't get those rocks in there. But if you put the rocks in first, then the pebbles fill in those gaps, and the sand fills in those gaps, and the water fills in, and now you can fit everything in there. And I think that's a beautiful way of looking at exactly what you're talking about. If a relationship with your kids is important, if a relationship with your wife is important, put those in as rocks. Set those times up. This is date night. this is time for where Hess to hang out for whatever this might be. And then you can allow business to be able to fit into the spaces between there. But you've said this is important and has to happen for me, 100%. For them, for us, for just balance in the world. So
yeah, man. Spot on.
Chase, this has been absolutely a fantastic conversation. I don't want to end it here, but I have to end it here.
Yeah.
If people wanted to work with you or get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out or stay in touch?
You can email me. Pretty easy to find. Our name is easy to remember, so you can do chase@heatmap.com. My Twitter is I'm Chase Mohseni. I think my LinkedIn is Chase Mohseni. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes. If you DM me, I always respond. Don't try to sell me anything. Just say you want to chat, and always down to help where I can. But yeah, like you said, incredible conversation. Made me think about some things I haven't thought about in a while. So thank you for making me put words to some things that were inside, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Same thing, Chase. Really appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom and time with us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.